Hi, and welcome to the Northern Renaissance. Okay, remember the Renaissance actually starts in the South. We all remember that part. In Italy, because of the wealth of the spice trade related to the Crusades, blah blah blah. This is where we have the Renaissance spreading to the north. Obviously starts in Italy and then hits France, England, all that good stuff. Your basic chart that every textbook has in it somewhere, the Northern versus the Southern Renaissance. Couple of things that I want to highlight here on this. The time, well, duh. Renaissance happens in the South first, blah. I like this, especially though, and everyone, where did that go? Yep. Everyone in Italy, if you just look at the art from the Italian Renaissance, everybody has these anatomically perfect bodies, very much like the Greek Hellenic art. You only show like the upper class people with the, not, just perfection. If you look at the north, you've got a lot more realistic real-life scenes, a lot less ethereal than in the Southern Renaissance. You've got your best thing here. Okay, here you go. There's the highlighting specialty. This is probably one of the best examples. We all have heard of Botticelli's Birth of Venus. Obviously you've got the idealized forms and figures, and it's straight up classical beauty. In the South, you have, slightly different story. This is Bruegel's peasant, this is Bruegel's Portrait of the Old Woman. They aren't all that ugly, because you've got more Bruegel stuff down there. You've got a hunting scene, and then you've got the peasant wedding. Again, it's a lot more lowbrow kind of stuff, much less upper classy than the Italians. One of my favorites here, this is by, it's called The Ugly Duchess by Quentin Matsys, M-A-T-S-Y-S. But they think that this one actually might have been the inspiration for the Duchess, or for one of the characters in Alice in Wonderland. Gosh, I hope that's a joke of a painting, because if not, that is a very unfortunate looking woman. But okay, moving on here. The biggest difference between the North and the Southern Renaissance is the education. Alright, all these down here are universities. See, Universities of Europe. Here we go. Look at Italy. Obviously, you've got a cluster of very, very old universities here in Italy. But look at how many you have over here in the Holy Roman Empire. France has a lot. England, well, England, they take a while to develop some universities. We've got Oxford, we've got Cambridge. I went to Oxford, incidentally. Lovely place. Spain has quite a few, considering the population there. But really, you've got them mainly clustered around here, up in the Holy Roman Empire. No wonder. Guess what's the next major thing that we study? It's the Reformation. That starts up here in the Holy Roman Empire. There's got to be a relation between that and the education there. So again, there's clearly a lot more universities in the North and the South. In the North, they're believing that education would solve, the major problems in societies. So yeah, we've got that. Okay, the spread of the Renaissance to the North. Well, duh. You have Gutenberg. Okay, A&E at one point ranked like the top 100 most important people of the millennium, and they've got all these big highbrow scientists like Newton's on there. I think Newton's maybe like number 3. Luther's number 2, I think. But the number 1 guy was Gutenberg, and it wasn't even just him. The poor guy actually made the printing press with 2 other guys, but I have no idea what the 2 other guys' names are. If I remember, he actually died penniless. He really just did the printing press to make up for his debts. But because of the printing press, which again starts in the Holy Roman Empire, you've got a printing press with movable type. You get mass reproduction of humanist texts. Increase in books means increase in literacy. People can't be duped by the church and the king anymore. Obviously, lots of writing in the vernacular. Blah blah blah. Okay. Number 2. Reason number 2 for the spread of the Renaissance. Constant warfare. You got a ton of them in the Renaissance period. Charles VIII of France invades in the late 15th century. The Habsburg Valois Wars are going on. Charles V invades Italy in the 16th century. Wars actually pretty good for cultural diffusion. For example, when the French invaded Italy, Charles was so incredibly impressed by all the cool stuff that Italy had that he invited a bunch of Italian artists up to France, like Da Vinci. These are some of Da Vinci's war machines. And Da Vinci was actually a architect, a defensive architect, I think, for the Medicis, if I'm right. But, you know, he gets kicked out of Florence, and he's invited to go to France, and supposedly he dies in the arms of the French king. I don't know how much that's true, but he does die in France, not one of the Italian city-states, because, you know, when they went down for the war, they realized, oh yeah, Da Vinci's actually got a lot of good stuff. And the last thing is the rise of the middle class. This is another Quentin Metsys, the guy that did The Ugly Duchess before. Now people have a lot more luxuries to spend on things, or a lot more money to spend on luxuries like books and stuff. Hence the rise of humanism in the North. This is a really interesting painting. I don't know what the deal is with this chick. You know, she's supposed to be reading the Bible here. Clearly you have it open to a picture of the Madonna and Child, but she looks a lot more interested in what he's doing than, you know, reading the Bible. It's another one of those, like the Arnold Feeney portrait that I've showed you. It's got that really awesome convex mirror in it. There you go. Is there a third person in the room? Is there somebody else, like, I don't know, sitting there looking at something outside of the, you know, being illuminated by the window? That's insanely anal retentive attention to detail right there. Let's see what else we got here. Again, we've got obviously a lot of detail, a lot of money. The dude's obviously very wealthy, although, I mean, you know, dude's getting his portrait painted, so duh, he's wealthy. And again, her sitting there reading a book, some sort of devotional Bible, something, that's the Madonna and Child. That's not really, you know, she's not really doing something that the Madonna and Child you would expect them to be doing. She's looking at the money. So, it's kind of an interesting one. Okay, moving right along. Two famous Northern Christian humanists. We have Desiderius Erasmus and Thomas More. I think Desiderius is a fantastic name. Both of them are critics, although this guy's a critic of the church, this guy's a critic of society. Both of them are all about education. Both of them believe that religion is a personal thing and you should study religion on your own, not necessarily needing the church, which honestly, back in the 16th century when they're both writing, this is heresy. This is absolute heresy. Alright, let's go with Erasmus first. I'm pretty sure I misspelled his name. Desiderius. Okay, maybe I didn't. I don't know. That's a hard name. Because the dude is Dutch. He's actually known as Erasmus of Rotterdam. I don't know where Rotterdam is in the Netherlands, but it's somewhere in there. He's known as the Prince of Humanists. Studied Latin and Greek at the University of Paris. Again, a northern university, because that's where they had him. Most important idea: everybody has to be able to read the Bible. Okay, this leads into translations of the Bible, which the Catholic Church was not real keen on. Again, the only accepted form of the Bible was the Latin form. So when we start translating the Bible, we have issues. Let's see. Here we go. In order to read, everybody must be able to learn Greek and Latin. Yeah, that'd be fun. He actually wrote several books on, like, Latin and Greek exercises. You know how in, like, introductory to French or introductory to Spanish books today, you know, you have to translate the sentences, and the sentences are like, the dog and the boy ate an apple while taking a walk, or something like that. He did the same kind of thing. He wrote books on Latin and Greek, but when you were translating the sentences were actually passages making fun of the church. So that's generally speaking, not what a monk ought to be doing. Alright, major beliefs. You've got education reform people, again, all about education. He believed that everybody should have an education. Well, he believed that every male should have an education. And then this one called the philosophy of Christ. Christianity, he said, is more of an attitude, much more personal. Not like, you know, performing all these rituals in church. That was sort of a humanist idea. Christianity should be about the study of man. Christ, who he, you know, the study of Christ, who he was, what he believed instead of what the church believed, which is a very, very radical statement. He is not as radical as Martin Luther, but he's definitely, for a 16th century guy, he's saying some heretical stuff, really. Wanted the Catholic Church to revamp itself in order to get back to what he considered to be the true religion, which again is a much more personal kind of religion, less about attending church, less about what the church wants, and more about what his version of what Christ would want. He wants more of a gradual change, though, whereas Martin Luther openly criticizes the church. Martin Luther causes a break with the church and says, hey guys, hey church, you're not doing religion right. Erasmus says that, but says, hey church, we need to reform, not hey church, we need to start a new church. It is not a coincidence that Erasmus's main work in Praise of Folly is 1509, and then Martin Luther starts nailing stuff to doors and starts the Protestant Reformation in 1517. That's what, 8-ish years between. I am sure that Luther was influenced by Erasmus. So much so that there is a very popular saying, Erasmus laid the egg that Luther hatched. We're not going to do this one right now because we haven't really studied enough for Martin Luther, but during our unit on the Reformation, you'll have to write an essay proving or disproving the idea that Erasmus laid the egg that Luther hatched. Just forewarning. Alright, guess what? You know how I said he was pretty heretical for the day? Well, that's gonna land you right here on the Index of Forbidden Books. For those of you who don't know, the Index of Forbidden Books is a list of books put out by the Catholic Church that no good Catholic should have. So again, you've got Galileo's stuff is on there, was on there. Erasmus's stuff was on there. Oh look, McAfee wants to update. Erasmus's stuff is on there. There's all these guys that the church considered heretical. I actually have a friend whose personal goal was to read every book on the Index of Forbidden Books. I haven't talked to him in a while to see how he did on that. Kind of an odd ambition. I think the list was actually abolished in 1996. So sorry kids, we can't make that our... Oh, that would be fun, like, you know, reading list for my next year's summer work. Okay. Most famous works, you've got the he translated the New Testament because, again, he believed that everybody ought to be able to read it for themselves, which got him in trouble. Colloquies, which is a bunch of sayings, and then In Praise of Folly. I'm going to try and get us to read some of that in class because I think In Praise of Folly is just hilarious. But again, I'm a geek, so, you know. Okay. Moving on into England. You have Sir Thomas More with, let's face it, ladies, that's an awesome hat. Yeah. Alright. Yep, he's English. Main figure of Christian humanism in England. Was actually the Lord Chancellor of England under Henry VIII. So he worked very closely with Henry VIII until Henry VIII chopped his head off. Because apparently Sir Thomas More, again, he's a radical kind of guy. But he's more criticizing society than the church, and when Henry VIII tried to make his own church, Thomas More wasn't going along with it, so Henry chopped off his head. So much for that, dear. Okay, moving along. Criticize society as a whole, again, which kind of marks him apart from Erasmus. Alright, people are not inherently corrupt, but they can be messed up by greed! Dang it. This is not focusing very well. Sorry, guys. Greed. This is very, very different from the Italians who, you know, again, you've got all these Italian merchants saying that God wants me to get a lot of money. Not so much for Thomas More. He's very opposed to monetary gain. Men and women are not inherently corrupt, but they are corrupted by greed and society. Yeah, this is, again, a big, huge departure from the Southern Renaissance. By the way, this should sound kind of familiar. Does anybody know who's the other guy who significantly later, like 200 years later, says that people are born good but were corrupted by society? Rousseau! Good job, Euro kids. Good job. Very proud of you. Alright, and then number 2, the other thing that he criticized was the formal Christian church. Okay, so he is a little bit of a religious critic. But again, in so that it's part of society, and society is one of the things that are corrupting people. Again, people ought to be Christians. He didn't say that religion was bad. He just said that you should be a Christian without the church. So again, kind of shows that people are really criticizing a lot before Martin Luther comes in there. So again, social institutions like the church mess people up. His major book is Utopia. What does utopia mean? The modern translation of utopia is an ideal place where, you know, everything is lovely and wonderful and happy. What utopia actually meant when he was writing things in the 16th century, utopia was translated to nowhere. This is a place called nowhere. A lot of times in utopia, people sort of look at that as sort of an early form of communism. Because according to him, all children have a humanist education, no private property, and we're all working for the good of society. That's pretty Karl Marxist right there. Both of these two are. That apparently children were going to be raised by the community as a whole. You don't go and live with your parents, you lived in this sort of community and everybody raises the children together. In utopia, there's no private property, it's a barter system. Yeah, it actually sounds a lot like early communism. So again, he's more is criticizing the corruption in society and the greed and how cool would it be if we didn't have corruption and greed anymore, as opposed to Erasmus, who's saying, hey, church, you know, you don't necessarily need the church as much as we thought you did before. More stuff was fantastic until, you know, Henry VIII once again chopped off his head for not supporting him in creating the English Reformation. Okay, guys, that's pretty much it. That was a fast one. I appreciate you sticking in here, and I'll see you soon. Don't forget, I think this stuff is going to be on the quiz coming up. Check your calendars. Thanks, guys. Bye.